The President. Members will please remain standing while the Chief Executive enters the chamber. The Chief Executive.
The Chief Executive will first address the Council.
Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, yes? Please take your seat. The Chief Executive is to address the Council now. Chief Executive, please. Mr. President, honourable members, first of all, my gratitude to the Council for passing the 2010 constitutional reform package and taking a crucial step which allows the democratic system of Hong Kong to move forward towards the goal of universal suffrage. In the coming months, the focus of my administration will be on improving people's livelihood. After I have listened to the views of various parties, I will strive to include the relevant measures in my October policy address. The present social conflicts facing Hong Kong are reflected partly in the current wealth gap in society and owed partly to a mismatch between expectations and the fundamental institution. I believe the ultimate solution to the social conflicts lie in the community being able to benefit from our economic development and sharing the fruits of our prosperity. If we are to enhance employment and wages, we must allow our economy to develop in a sustainable manner. The Task Force on Economic Challenges proposed the development of 6 industries with opportunities. In my policy address last year, I accepted the recommendations and asked Individual Policy Bureau to press ahead with the promotion of these industries with a view to boosting our competitiveness and making Hong Kong the most competitive city in the country and the region. At the same time, we must overcome the problems brought about by economic transformation. In the face of the challenge arising from globalization, our economic structure is gravitating towards high value-added services industry. But some in the community who are kept out of these high value-added industries have seen their wages stagnate, leading to the phenomenon of working poverty. At the other end of the spectrum, those who are in the high value-added industries have seen growing wages. The wealth gap in society has widened as a result. To allow all to share in the prosperity, apart from making the pie bigger, we must also consider the question of allocation of public resources. In this respect, the government and the public need to forge a consensus. Hong Kong has all along maintained a simple and low-tax regime. Government expenditure is also in line with the basic law requirement to keep expenditure within the limits of revenues, keep the budget commensurate with the growth rate of our gross domestic product, and strive to achieve a fiscal balance. Since I took up office, I started to tackle policies involving the allocation of important social resources such as healthcare financing. Another focus of the public as far as allocation of resources is concerned is housing policy. There is a limited supply of land in Hong Kong. The role the government plays in public housing is a highly contentious issue. The Transport and Housing Bureau is now conducting consultation to examine what needs to be done on home ownership subsidy. I will give an account in my policy address. On assistance to the working poor, we are now reviewing the Cross-District Transport Subsidy Scheme or Transport Support Scheme. We have pledged to put forward a concrete proposal before the end of the year. The minimum wage bill will resume its second reading tomorrow. I am grateful to members for your rational and balanced scrutiny of the bill. I hope the bill will be duly passed. The tasks that follow would be even more important, one of which is the setting of the minimum wage. We have to safeguard workers from wage exploitation, and we must also maintain a favorable business environment. We need to strike a proper balance between the two. On social welfare, our biggest challenge is the aging population. The post-war baby boom generation has approached retirement age. The demands for elderly and healthcare services will continue to rise and at a spiraling rate too. We need to have vision as we confront this challenge and draw up our priorities and strategies on elderly services. We are now devising plans for the community and home care model. And we need a new mindset in exploring the question of the elderly retiring on the mainland and the relevant welfare and healthcare arrangements. For the disadvantaged who are the least able to fend for themselves, the government is duty-bound to resolve effectively their various problems. Honourable members, the financial tsunami of the century has come to an end. Hong Kong has thankfully survived it, but there remain latent risks in the global economy. The timing and approach of the exit strategy of various countries may directly impact upon the ups and downs of our economy. We must stay vigilant despite the improvement. Our policies must be able to alleviate the hardship of the people and allow them to share in our prosperity while maintaining sound finances and staying prepared for rainy days. During the consultation exercise on the policy address in the next 3 months, I hope to seek the views of members, political parties and the public on these various livelihood issues, including the plight faced by low-income households, housing policy and welfare for the elderly. Thank you. The Chief Executive will now answer questions put by members. Mr. Leung.
Chief Executive, just now in your introduction, you said that you were grateful to this Council for approving the 2012 constitutional reform package. Apparently, you've all but forgotten that when you and I stood for the third term of Chief Executive election, you made a pledge. You said that by 2012, before you step down, you would comprehensively deal with the 2 elections issues. But I don't intend to ask you questions on those issues. But I think that this is really amazing that you've forgotten everything about it. Well, the Civic Party is very concerned about something. And of course, that also involves your honours list. How come you've awarded medals to these persons? But this is also not my question. Mr. Leung, please ask your question. Well, the question that I'd like to put to you is a mismatch of various issues in Hong Kong. There is a serious mismatch problem in Hong Kong. You might not know what I'm going to say. Well, I think there is this problem of mismatch in terms of the niches and columbarium places for people and also the property market. Well, 39 Conduit Road was sold at $70,000 per square foot, and the sale price was a big problem already. And then subsequently, the developer said that he would not be going after the price deficiency and so on and so forth. All right, Chief Executive, as you know, even if you go to the wet market to buy grocery items, and if you cheat on the weight, then you'll be arrested and you'll be prosecuted. And if you try to make market and if you try to lift the prices in the stock market, you will have to be prosecuted. How come in the property market, when you make false statements and false representation, the Chief Executive is still reluctant to legislate to regulate the situation? So in front of the 7 million people of Hong Kong, Chief Executive, can you tell us when the executive arm of the administration will be legislating to regulate the sale of uncompleted flats? Thank you. Chief Executive. My administration has never evaded this issue. Indeed, recently, we fully understand the sentiments of the community with regard to the sale of property prices, whether or not they have made any false representation, whether or not they have falsified information, and so on and so forth. And with regard to the disclosure of information in the sale of property, this is also very important. We fully understand that. That's why we have done a lot of work, including the so-called 9 measures and 12 regulations. And if there are other loopholes that have to be plugged, we will also spare no effort in those areas. And of course, these measures and regulations, all of them will be useful. But then I believe that at the end of the day, the objective is to protect the purchaser, to ensure that there will be a fair environment so that his lifelong earnings will be invested in something that will yield him a reasonable return. As to the need for legislation, I believe that if all these measures and the regulations have not been able to achieve the desired effect, then something needs to be done about it. But then do we really need to spend so much time on it? Well, it might be necessary, but then apparently these measures have already yielded some effects. And as you can see, when we try to tackle the problem, it's not like usual or normal commercial activities so that there would be a lot of sales and there are a lot of retailers out there. In fact, what we are dealing with, well, if you look at the major developers, we are talking about not many of them. In fact, we've only got a handful of them, and also together with the smaller developers, we're just talking about a dozen or so, and therefore we believe that the problem can be dealt with by way of administrative measures. But then if measures prove to be ineffective, then we would definitely take measures to deal with it. And we are actually considering the appropriateness of legislation and also how it can be done. All these have been done in tandem. Mr. Leung, I think the Chief Executive has pointed to the problem, that is property developer. Actually, we're talking about a handful of them, and there are definitely a dozen or so of them. And you talk about the 9 measures and 12 regulations. I don't know whether or not you're talking about more measures up your sleeve. All right, whether or not it's 9 measures or 12 regulations or whatever, do you agree that they have not been able to deal with the problem of false representation? All right, you ask them to announce the price 3 days beforehand. All right, you are very familiar with them, but then still it's not able to tackle this problem. So do you have any intention to introduce things like what is provided for under the SFO, so that for items or announcements that might be made in order to boost the market? Well, if they are not effective, then of course we will have to consider that. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, President, I'd just like him to clarify several things. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, it's your turn to ask questions. You can ask questions now. Well, I'd like to know whether or not you're a lame duck today, whether or not you're scared today, and I'd like you to clarify, if you are a lame duck, then there is no reason why you should be standing here. So is he a lame duck? So that is a health check. That is a health indicator. Is he a lame duck? So would you be interested in answering this question? Because somebody has publicly challenged you that. Well, this is obviously not my question, because by seeing him, you see that he's a lame duck. All right. Just now you made a brilliant statement. You said that you will have to deal with some of the deep-rooted problems, right? And in your answer to Mr. Alan Leung's question, you also said that if administrative measures prove to be ineffective, then you'll be prepared to legislate. All right, we're going to enact the minimum wage bill shortly. Are you very happy about that? Obviously, you know. So my question for you is, do you know the median pay of Hong Kong, and what is half of that like? Obviously, your grip sheet does not tell you that. Well, Mr. Leung, my duty is to ensure that every member will be asking one question only. And if you ask a barrel of questions, then you said that I'll be able to answer that question, then I'll not be able to tell which is your question. So can you tell us which is your question for the Chief Executive to answer? Well, in fact, he can choose to answer any of them. My question to you is, my formal question for you is, you've appointed a so-called Provisional Minimum Wage Commission. All right, have you finished with drinking your water? All right, you appointed that body, right? So in appointing those people, what were your criteria in appointing them? All right, within the business sector, there was the chairman of the cafe, the Coral, and he's hiring people at $19 per hour. So the hourly rate is $19 per hour. That's why he's called Mr. 19 Chen. So $20 Zheng is already outdated. He's now hiring people at $19 an hour. So what's the criteria? What are the criteria? Because he has publicly said that the wage level of the Café de Coral is $22 per hour. And then when compared to the demand by the labor sector for $33 per hour, and also for half of the median hourly wage of $33. So what's the purpose of appointing him into that body? Does it mean that you want the future minimum wage to be set at $19 or $20 or $22? Can you answer this question? Mr. Leung, have you finished your question? I'm asking this on behalf of several million workers in Hong Kong in asking you this question. You will have to answer this question.
This is $19 here. Have you finished your question? Please take your seat. Mr. Chief Executive. Now, the purpose of appointing the Provisional Minimum Wage Commission is for this commission to represent different sectors in the community, employers and employees. And what's more important, we want a transparent and fair way in dealing with the question of minimum wage. I'm sure everyone in Hong Kong will be able to give their views on the matter. And you can see that labor unions have put forward their views, employers have also put forward their views, but I think we share the same objective. We don't want workers in Hong Kong to be exploited on the wage front. At the same time, we don't want wages to be excessively high, leading to high unemployment in a community or leading to impact on the economy. And there is not a single member in the commission that could sway the decision. Everyone is entitled to his views. And other people will also give their views. I'm sure at the end of the day, the Commission's recommendation will be considered and debated by different sectors, and definitely in this council. Mr. Wong Yuk-man, Mr. Wong Yuk-man, please do not interrupt the Chief Executive. So in any case, we will have to pass subsidy legislation to determine the wage level. So there's no way the Commission could work behind closed doors. It has to conduct its work in an open manner. But then the Commission does represent different sectors, especially it has representatives from of both employers and employees. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, there are just 12 members, 3 from the employer side, 3 employees, 3 scholars, and 3 from the government, and 3 workers. The workers are the one to benefit, so the ratio is 1 to 3. In the 12-member commission, there are only 3 workers. Can you come to your question, please? So my question for the Chief Executive is, as you appointed Mr. Chen, did you know that he was going to issue a profit warning? That is, if the wage were to be increased to $33 as requested by the labor sector unanimously, then he would issue profit warning. And this is a request put forward by millions of low-income workers. But then this person said that if that's the wage level, his company would collapse. And so how do you expect him to vote? So you have to answer this question. Functional constituencies already preventing this council from representing the people. And you are elected by a handful of businessmen. And you still appoint this person who is against a $33 wage. Please don't comment. Please ask the question. I think you've asked the question. Can you take your seat? Do you know him? Do you know how much he earns? Do you know he's going to issue a profit warning if wage is going to be set at $33? Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, please take your seat. Have you got my question? Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, please stop asking your question. Please take your seat. Chief Executive. When I appointed the Provisional Minimum Wage Commission, at that time there was no mention of any possible minimum wage level. The issue was discussed for some time. $33 or $20 recently proposed, it happened later. I think what you said was inconsistent. I don't think we need to be locked in an argument on that. Please, can you allow me to answer the question? Mr. Leung, please keep quiet. Yes, you know, we all know people are discerning. because whatever level is being proposed, we have to be answerable to workers and employers. We have to let people see that it's a fair decision. In the Commission, there are government representatives, there are scholars, and there are balanced views. There are free employee representatives and free employer representatives. They're all working together. I think most believe they are doing good work here. I think what's important is whether the mechanism they propose is acceptable to the people of Hong Kong. I think they have come to an advanced stage of their consideration, so we can all sit down together and agree on something. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, you have asked your question. Please take your seat. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, you are now taking up the time of other members. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, you are now acting against the rules of procedure. You are taking up the time of the members. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, please leave the chamber at once. Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, please leave the chamber at once. Please leave the chamber at once. Ms. Tanya Chan. Chief Executive, in the past few months, Mr. Leung Chanying, convener of the Executive Council, openly said repeatedly, and he also wrote articles and he criticized policies under your government, under your leadership. Does it mean that the chief executive could no longer work together with executive councillors? Or is it the case that collective responsibility exists only in name now? Or is it the case that chief executive, you've become a lame duck chief executive? Chief executive. The executive council has been operating well. I haven't witnessed any major problems. Ms. Tanya Chen. But I think the fact speaks louder than words. When the government is conducting a consultation on housing policy, there is already an executive councillor who is even the convener, Leung Chanying, to say that you should resume the production of home ownership scheme. So he's already set the tone, so are you not deceiving yourself? I think you are into the last 2 years of your term, and we can see that you're not able to control those who work with you. In that case, should you just focus on social functions like BBQ parties?
When any policy is put out for public consultation, in particular, when we have an open mind to seek views from all sectors of the community, then anybody in the community, including you, Honourable Member, and Mr. C.Y. Leung, will be free to give their views. What kind of problems are these? At the end of the day, if the government makes a decision on a particular policy, then of course all government staff, all accountability officials, all EXCO members will have to work together to implement the policy. With regard to what you said about the resumption of HOS production, well, we are conducting a public consultation exercise, and therefore we should welcome all views from all sectors, right? Mr. Albert Chan? President, last time during the election campaign, the chief executive said that he would go all out to work out the solution to the political reform package. And when he made that pledge, and very rarely he has been able to implement his pledge. And as a result of that, the Civic Party and the LSD staged this resignation for referendum campaign. And what is even more rare would be for the Democratic Party to sell off their conscience, and they also betrayed their political platform. And as a result, the chief executive has also been short-changed because, according to the information you you raised the matter 3 times with Mr. Xi Jinping, and you proposed that the Democratic Party's proposal should be adopted, but then it was rejected. But then the DP was able to work through the go-between, political go-between, and they were able to reach a deal with the Beijing authorities. How come you, as the chief executive, when you talk to the central leaders, you were not able to convince them, and yet through a political go-between, you were able to, or through a political pimp, you were able to do this? So was this a sell-off, and was there something that you were not able to give an account to the public, and therefore there's something that you've hidden from the public, and that's why the central authorities have accepted that? Is it that you have not reflected those views to the central authorities, or have they been involved in a sell-off? That's why even you were kept in the dark. Well, have you finished your question? I haven't finished the question. It's a question about you being a lame duck. Mr. Albert Chan, as we all know, this question and answer session is not a debate. And if members are taking advantage of your opportunity to ask questions, to raise or make remarks, which try to level an attack against other political parties of this council, and for those who are the subject of such attacks, and if they do not have the opportunity to respond, that's not fair to them. That's why in asking questions, please try to focus on your question, and you should explain your question and elaborate on your question instead of making use of the opportunity to ask questions to criticize other political parties of this council, or else it would not be fair to them. So, Mr. Albert Chan, I think you've already asked your question, so can we ask the chief executive to answer those questions? Those were just objective comments. No, you should not be making comments at all. Well, in the process, the conclusion is that the chief executive has been criticized as being a lame duck. So when it comes to the constitutional reform package, all your bureau heads and directors and so on, so is it that it's like what some political parties say, that the entire government is a lame duck and therefore only the DP managed to strike a deal? Some of these remarks are really lamentable, because back in 1997, I remember there was this logo, and there's an old saying, and the English translation for that saying is that evil to him who thinks evil. In other words, the chickens will come home to roost. So for those who are making remarks in this council, you will have to be responsible for your remarks, and you will have to be responsible for yourselves. Unfortunately, after 1997, that logo was taken away. And on the issue of constitutional reforms, the SAR government, during the critical moment, did what it should do, and as a result, we managed to get the package passed, and we have managed to succeed in getting it passed. And of course, there are a lot of issues that have happened, and it shows that the central authorities have displayed a lot of wisdom, and many members of this council have also been very courageous in doing things, and it's also and many people have been very accommodating, and many people have prepared to pay for the progress of democratic development, and that's the fruit of the hard work of many parties. I hope that you will respect the fruit of the hard work instead of trying to insult people or trying to insinuate people. Thank you. President, I think the chief executive has not answered my question at all. The whole thing is that the result of secret talks, and you have not given any account to us at all, because it's the proposal by the political party, and there's no mention of this at all. And the chief executive is your system that has denied the participation by the public. So can the CE answer this question? He has not answered the question at all. So for the development progress of the whole package is the result of secret talks, and the public has been denied any participation in it. So can you answer the question as to when you knew about such secret talks going on, and that there was this political deal, and were you aware of the conditions and the terms of the deal, or else how come people are saying that you're a lame duck? Can you sit down? And chief executive, I've already answered the question, and there's nothing that I'd like to add. So what about the relationship between the executive and the legislature? He has not answered my question. I was asking when did he know about it? Because this is something that the public is entitled to know. How come you're not even willing to answer the question on when you knew about it? Mr. Wong Yuk-man. Thank you, President. I'd like to ask the Chief Executive this question. All right, our World Cup has just been completed on Monday, and I'm sure the Chief Executive and many officials here, they all watched the soccer match until very late into the night. During the World Cup period, only one broadcaster was broadcasting the matches, and that's cable TV. And we have 2 free terrestrial TV broadcasters, and they were only able to broadcast the matches through their HD channels. And many people do not have access to high definition channels, and that's why there are also others who do not have cable TV channels, and that's why they have been denied the right to watch the World Cup games. And even for reporting or covering it in the news reports, we can only see some animation and just pictures without the actual clips. So I don't know why that had happened, and this is really very rare. And for the World Cup, which is held once every 4 years, it has become a major event worldwide. It's also a big event for all the football or soccer fans. It has already gone beyond the rim of sports, and in this case, some Hong Kong people have been denied the chance to view the match. So it's like soccer, it's like a World Cup and also the Olympics. These are major events that the public should be entitled to watch them, and therefore all TV channels should be able to show them. And you should have discussed with the CCTV so they would be able to broadcast the matches live instead of spending $150 million on the referendum or on the by-elections. So how are we going to work out that? Yes, I can fully feel how the public, the frenzy in the public about the World Cup, because on Monday morning when we came back to work, all the officials, all the staff members were very tired because they had to stay up late, and they have to stay up overnight, and some of them actually had hoarse voices. And yes, for families who do not have high-definition channels, in fact, the administration has already made arrangements for the broadcasting of the games in some community halls and so on. Well, this is a practical issue that has to be considered. We will consider that during the next World Cup, we will have to do a better job so as to ensure that in the finals and semi-finals, all people will be able to see it, and also through the current licensing conditions, and also through certain arrangements that can be done. And there is time for us to consider this.
Mr. Wong Yuk-man, can I ask whether the government would seriously consider buying the broadcasting rights of mega events like the Olympic Games or the World Cup, so that the public would be able to enjoy these games? While we can achieve it through other means, we may not need to use public funds for the purpose. What I'm saying is that it's important that the semi-finals and finals could be watched by most. But then, at the same time, we can never meet all the demands. You know, some people, they are not keen to watch soccer games at home. They rather watch it in shopping malls and other places where they have more fun. But of course, the World Cup is held once every 4 years, and many Hong Kong people are passionate about it. So we have to see what we can do more to make things work better, and the government will be keen to do it. Mr. James To, after the passage of the 2012 electoral reform, the constitutional reform package, the people are keenly waiting for major developments following the passage. Some have expressed concern that when the social environment becomes a little more stable because of the passage of the reform, then the government may push ahead with the legislation for Article 23, or instead or would you instead seize upon the opportunity to propose measure to deal with the 2017-2020 universal suffrage issue? So are you going to use up all your credit and just be mouthpiece of state leaders, or are you going to fight for the people of Hong Kong for true universal suffrage in 2017 and 2020? For legislation for Article 23, you know that the SALG attempted to enact local legislation for Article 23, that's to fulfill our constitutional duty. Well, you've asked me this question many times. I've answered it many times that this is not our priority. At the moment, we have no plan for a legislative timetable for Article 23 of the Basic Law. On the question of constitutional reform, within my term, in 2007, we were given the timetable for universal suffrage by the NPCSC. After that, we did a lot of work, and then just 2 weeks ago, this council passed the 2012 constitutional reform package, and we've been able to enhance the democratic elements in future elections. So what I need to do in my term is to follow up on all the relevant issues in terms of local legislation. We have to make sure we could pave the way for universal suffrage in the 2012 elections, and I believe that is what the public expect this government to do. Mr. James Toh. Now, is it just your vision that you will do a proper job and implement the constitutional reform package for 2012? Can you not be more far-sighted to do more for the people of Hong Kong in the remaining of your 2 years so that you could strive for a true universal suffrage for 2017-2020? That is, you have a 10-year legislation roadmap. While I will do what I need to do within my term, there are still a lot of remaining tasks, and I will press on with them. But then there is also work left for the next government. Otherwise, what is the next government going to do? Mr. Wong Yuk-man. The chief executives lectured us that we mustn't be mean in our words because you've heard a lot of it. You've also been shouting "act now," and you shouted as loudly as I do. Now, I'm not going to speak mean language today. Now, when you ran for chief executive election, you said you were a politician, but by any standard, you are no politician. But then you are not just engaged in politics because you are led around by politicians. There's nothing you can do. So after you finish your 2 terms of chief executive, I think you should really, you must be really resentful of politics. Now, you were not able to answer Mr. Albert Chan's question. Perhaps you didn't want to answer his question, and then you went out to lecture him. Now, Mr. Albert Ho is the chairman of a political party. He said you are a bit of a lame duck. So he's profited from the proposal, and still he's chastising you. Mr. Wong, please come to your question. Now, this is something he said in a solemn occasion. He said so in a press conference. That means he could have direct access to State President Hu Jintao. We're talking about Hu Jintao. Hu Jintao asked Elsie Leung to hand a letter to the Democratic Party. And you said before there was no room for compromise. Now, you worked very hard, and Chairman Kwong tried to be fair to you. He said that you told him that on 3 occasions you discussed the DP's proposal with Xi Jinping, but he refused. Now, Xi Jinping is a member of the Standing Committee of the Politburo. He's in charge of Hong Kong affairs. He doesn't have any say. Even you approach a person directly who is in charge of Hong Kong affairs, but he's not able to make any decision. But then DP could have direct dialogue with the highest authorities through a middleman. Now, you have the duty to defend one country, 2 systems and a high degree of autonomy. Do you agree that the role you've played in this political saga is like what Mr. Albert Ho said? You've been rather lame. You were bypassed, and the DP was able to have direct communication with Hu Jintao. I want you to answer the question. You have to answer it. When I discussed the constitutional reform proposal with Democratic Party, I never mentioned names of state leaders. I just said that there were certain issues that needed to be decided by the CPG. And also in the entire process, as I said earlier, perhaps you didn't hear me, I said we played a key role of coordination. And we did what we should do at the critical moment to achieve what's been achieved. But of course, it's not just the hard work of the SARG. I said there was also the involvement of the state government, political parties and members before we could achieve this together. Now you have to understand what one country, two systems means. Whenever we want to change our political system, especially the election methods for the C elections and the electoral elections, according to basic law, there has to be the involvement of the CPG, the involvement of the CE, and also 2/3 majority of LegCo. So we need to do proper coordination among all three parties, and that is the task of the SAG. I've never heard Mr. Ho ever meeting with the state president. I didn't say he met with the state president. Ms. Elsie Leung passed on messages to him. Can you let him finish? He didn't hear what I said properly. How is he expected to answer the question? Now, I'm just saying, in this case, everyone has done something, but the key role has been played by the SLG. We did what we are supposed to do, and so we are all we have all contributed to the result. Now, I've been most patient, but you haven't answered the question. Under Article 22 of the Basic Law, the CPG must not interfere with matters of Hong Kong. And then for the Annexes 1 and 2 of the Basic Law, what is the role of the CPG? It's just the NPCSC. NPCSC, not the government. But then eventually, we have the 2007 NPCSC decision. It's changed from 3 steps to 5 steps. Still, the key role should be played by the SLG, right? Can you ask your supplementary question? So my question is, he hasn't answered my question. Now, this matter has been resolved satisfactorily. You don't need to be subject to a no confidence motion. Now, according to the DP6 member report, you were not able to make any decisions. I'm just trying to defend you. You have to answer the question. Mr. Wong, please take your seat. Why can't you answer the question? Mr. Wong. No, this is so rude. There's no way I can answer something so rude. What I mean is rude. Mr. Melba Chan, please take your seat. The two members, if you don't observe order, please leave the chamber. Dr. Paul Tse. If he does that, how come you don't evict him from the chamber? The conduct of behaviors is such that we're not able to continue our meeting. Please leave the chamber now. Both of you, please. Leave the chamber now. Both of you, leave the chamber now, please. Both members, please leave the chamber now. You don't have to escort me. I'll leave on my own. Mr. Albert Chan, Mr. Wong Yuk-man, please leave now. Mr. Albert Chan, please.
Dr. Philip Wong. President, my question is related to pedestrian safety. Recently, with the onset of the rainy season, we have many trees on roadside and they might collapse, and as a result, there might be injuries. well, when you inspect these trees, and if we have to do it by the administration, then that would be very manpower consuming. So will the chief executive try to tell the public as to how they could do something about it so that their awareness can be enhanced, and if their knowledge can be improved and awareness can be enhanced, that would also help solve the problem of tree falling. And also, sometimes when you engage contractors to carry out road excavations, can they be more careful so that in the course of their works, they would not be doing harm or damaging the trees? Chief Executive. Thank you, Dr. Wong. It's a matter of public concern. Indeed, we have already instructed the relevant departments, in particular the Development Bureau, so that they'll be making announcements as to what different departments will have to do in the wake of the recent incidents and also before the onset of the typhoon season. This is quite a difficult task because, well, the TMO, the Tree Management Office, will have to deal with a large number of trees, and we are talking about more than 1 million trees just in the urban area, and in the suburban area they will have to look after over 10 million trees, and therefore if we just rely on the Development Bureau and the TMO, they simply will not be able to complete the task. And you talk about publicity and education, and through the contractors and so on, we have already got guidelines to tell contractors how they can protect the trees. And for educating the public, yes, a lot more needs to be done. And also for staff training, we will be stepping up that in order to enhance our work. With regard to tree safety, in every major city, we are facing the same problem. On the one hand, we would like to conserve the nature and also the heritage, but then at the same time, we also have to ensure that pedestrian and public safety will be protected. And in doing so, it's not just the work or effort of the administration. The public will also have to work together with the administration. And your views have been very constructive as to how we can work together, including through the local residents, even the district councils, and also the schools and the students. And also we can work together. And the contractors, when they carry out road works, it could affect the trees. And therefore, we all have to be very careful. Other than preserving the trees, we also have to ensure that they are not going to pose any danger to the public. Dr. Leung Kwok-hung. Thank you, Chairman. I am pleased that the Chief Executive said that after the constitutional reform package had been passed, then more time can be spent on livelihood issues, including the working poor and also the wealth gap and so on. But then apparently he has omitted something. All right, last month, on the day when the constitutional reform package was passed, this council also passed another member's motion, and that's to urge the administration to enact legislation on standard working hours. And Chief Executive, you might not know very well about standard working hours. I might give you a brief introduction. In fact, standard working hours doesn't mean that we have to limit the working hours of an employee. It just gives the employee to have greater autonomy over how many hours he would like to work. And then if he has to work overtime, then he will be compensated accordingly. Well, some people might think that with standard working hours, that would only apply in some advanced economies. This is a product of welfarism. In fact, this is a universal value. Even in Cambodia, in Vietnam, or in Thailand, actually worldwide, only 4 or 5 countries, or a handful of countries, do not have such legislation. And these handful of countries are India, Pakistan, Nigeria, and Zimbabwe. So standard working hours only enable the employees to work hard and then get paid accordingly, and then they would also be able to safeguard their health. And my ward office conducted a survey in April, and we found out that many employers of SMEs in Hong Kong, well, 56% of them are in favor of that. Only some 40% of them, or 24%, were against it. Can you ask your question? Well, last time when the motion was carried, the Secretary for Labour and Welfare indicated that he would not be able to make a decision on it. So my question for the Chief Executive, during the remaining term of your office, I'm sure you would not say that you're not going to do anything about it. So while taking care of Hong Kong's business environment, will you be prepared to legislate on standard working hours? Chief Executive, well, this issue is not like what the Secretary said, that he would not be able to make a decision on it. it depends on a number of factors, and we have to look at the market environment in Hong Kong. In particular, if we have to legislate to regulate the situation, will it affect the flexibility in the labor market? That's very important, because we have to be very careful about it, because for anything that would interfere with the operation of the labor market, will it affect employment? Will it also affect the workers' interests? That's what we are concerned about. We are of the view that in the past we conducted surveys on standard working hours, and if we have to work on any policy, we must not underestimate the implication on the employer, the employees, and also the economy. We have to be very careful about that. But then after the enactment of the minimum wage bill, I think we can start our discussion on this. That is, we have to look at it from the perspective of protecting the rights of the workers, and also how we can ensure the continuous prosperity of our economy. We can look at the issue from those perspectives. Yes, Dr. Leung. Well, Mr. Tung, it's not that you do not have the means to do it. It's just a question of will, because the hospital authority during the past 2 years, you gave it additional resources. It's about $3 billion. And in 2007, the HA also promised that they would take measures to improve the working hours of our colleagues. And 2 weeks ago, Mr. Fred Lee referred a complaint case to me. And we had some interns and some resident doctors had to work very long hours. They were required by the HA to do so. So can you complete your question? Well, I've taken only 3 minutes. Well, the complaint case was relating to July. He had to work an average of 79 hours a week, and in August he had to work an average of 98 hours per week, and then in September he had to work an average of 74 hours a week. So my question for Mr. Zhang, Hong Kong under your leadership, well, Hong Kong has so many resources and yet is not willing to do it. So what is your comment on it? Chief Executive, well, just now we're talking about very unique circumstances, in particular about doctors' work hours. It's not just unique to Hong Kong. I'm sure as doctors go, the convention worldwide is set out in the UK, in the US, and even in other countries, doctors' working hours are always very long. Well, you talk about the excessively long hours. I would have questions about that. But then, as you know, in the hospital authority, they are facing up to the issue. They are trying to resolve the problem, and they're actually talking to their staff in order to reach a consensus. Mr. Lau Wong-Fat. Thank you, President. Chief Executive, my question is partially related to the question raised by Dr. Philip Wong. Well, the weather is very hot, and the observatory has also forecast that there's going to be rain in the next few days. A typhoon might be coming. All right, during the rainy and typhoon season, people are concerned about the possibility of landslips and also flooding and so on. And they're also concerned whether or not there might be trees falling. And such incidents would also cause casualties and fatalities. So my question for the Chief Executive is this. Will you consider educating the public so that they'll be able to conduct inspection by the naked eyes of the trees to see whether or not they are dangerous? So will they be able to carry out a naked eye inspection of the trees?
Well, as far as I am aware, for visual inspection of trees is an internationally recognized method of inspecting or checking trees. In fact, our colleagues are also using devices to inspect the trees. But then if you have to find out whether or not trees are safe, we have more than 1 million trees in the urban area, that therefore they can only do it on a regular basis. But whether or not they'll be able to do a perfect job so that no single tree will fall to injure people, yes, that's something that we are trying to do. But then there are always imperfections. But then I agree with what you said, and I already told Dr. Wong that before the onset of the rainy and typhoon season, we will have to step up our work. We will have to take follow-up action. We have to do our job properly, and we will try our very best to do it. But then, as you know, our TMO only has several hundred staff, and there are so many trees around.
Well, sometimes a tree might look okay, but then shortly afterwards it just falls, and it could injure people, and then it would be widely reported in the media. But then if you just mechanically inspect every tree, simply we are not able to do it because we simply do not have the resources. I don't believe that any country would be able to do it on a regular basis. But then after the several unusual and unfortunate incidents, I'm sure both the administration and our colleagues will be paying special attention to it. And through the hard work of the administration and the district councils, it's not just us who will be inspecting the trees. I think residents should also be more mindful or vigilant about the trees. If they can see termites, and if they see that the trees are rotten and so on, then they can report the cases to us immediately so that we can take immediate follow-up action. Mr. Lam Tai-Fai. Thank you, Chief Executive. Chief Executive, once again, I'd like to congratulate you that under your leadership, the 2012 political package has finally been passed by this Council. And I'm sure you can now concentrate your efforts and resources on resolving livelihood and social problems and economic problems. Time flies. And I'm sure you would recall that last year, on behalf of the sector, I raised this with you. I talked about amending Section 39E of the tax revenue ordinance. Well, back in 1989, when this was back in 1986, when this was enacted, that was targeting companies who were trying to evade tax. And then in 1992, when it was amended, we were trying to encourage more companies to stay Hong Kong to develop. But then with the change in time, the manufacturing sector has already moved northwards, and if they put their recruitment on the mainland in order to improve their productivity, then they will no longer be able to claim tax deduction for equipment and mechanical devices and so on. But then on the one hand, we're trying to transform ourselves in order to cater for the domestic consumption sector. But then we will also not be able to have a status, and therefore we would be chased after by the Inner Revenue Department for taxes and so on. And that's why we've been reflecting the situation to you time and again. We've been asking you to change the legislation, but then we understand that in changing the legislation, there might be enforcement difficulties. Precisely because there are difficulties, that's why we hope that you'll be able to do something about it more expeditiously. In March this year, some government departments tried to pass the buck to a so-called coordination group on tax reform, but then 4 months have elapsed, and to the sector, no progress has been made whatsoever, and there's been no response to our request whatsoever. So I don't know what the working group has done, what kind of work has been done. No roadmap has been shown, and there is no timetable. And last year, when you answered my question in this chambers, you said that to amend the tax regime, if that would facilitate the operation of some of the Hong Kong companies on the mainland, then you'll be more than willing to do it. And that's why I do cherish this opportunity in this question and answer session. I'd like to voice the sentiments to you once again. And 1 year has already elapsed. No progress has been made. So what is your question then? So I hope that the Chief Executive will understand this serious problem so that you'll be able to do something for it. So can you take the leadership in looking into the problem, or can you at least ask the coordination group so that it can give us a timetable as to when the situation will be reviewed, so that the law can be amended, so that we would know something will be happening, so that our sector will be able to develop?
Now, this is a tax issue. I hope you will continue to take this up with Professor Chen. You can't expect me to lead every task of the government. You know, there is an overriding principle when it comes to taxes, that is territorial principle. When there are economic activities that moved out of Hong Kong, there will be different ways to handle it. And it's not just a straightforward issue. It's not just about depreciation allowance. But of course, I fully appreciate what you are saying. And for manufacturers based on the mainland, you would like to see their heavy financial burden relieved. But then for certain issues, there's just no way we could resolve them. Because if it's against the territorial principle, then it may be difficult. But then there may be other means to deal with the matter. I'm sure you know that well, and I hope you will take it up with Professor Chen. And of course, if there are still outstanding issues, you could still go to the financial secretary before you finally come to me. Dr. Lam, please trust me. I've been trying to pursue this with the Revenue Department in the past 2 years. Mr. Vincent Fang and other members have been doing this as well. We have tried to explain the situation to the departments. We know exactly what your reasons are, but that doesn't mean that after we've heard your reasons, then we just hold the matter. Now, reason why I'm raising it with you because I have nowhere else to turn to. And then the sector doesn't know how they can upgrade their industries while at the same time they're being pursued taxes. They don't know what to do. They're at a loss. And that's why I would like your personal opinion on the matter. I hope you will get personally involved and make other departments to do more sooner. Because if I can't get anywhere with them, I have to turn to you. I don't know who else to turn to. Well, you know, it's all about the question of territorial principle. Because then there are things that we can't tax, and there are taxes we should receive, but we don't, and that could lead to loopholes in the tax law, and that's the reason why it's taken so long, and still we couldn't accede to your request. You know, there's too many others involved. Please talk to Professor Chen. If he thinks it cannot be done, then there's nothing I can do either, maybe. Because if it's a departure from the principle I mentioned, that is the territorial principle, then there's nothing we can do because many may be affected. I agree you may not be able to do it, but can you at least try? Can we do this? I'll talk to Professor Chen and also the Financial Secretary about it, okay? Mr. Fred Lee. I have a big question mark. 5 years ago, when you first ran for this election, Mr. Albert Chan nominated you, but just now he was, you know, chastising you like that. I wonder who's changed, he or you, but it's not my question. Can I choose to answer this question? I have to answer an important question. That's just my preamble, okay? Now I've received many emails. They've asked DP not to give up on following up on the 39 Conduit Road incident. A few days ago, when I went to a bar to watch the World Cup, Liu Ying-tat actually, when he went to the bar, someone told Liu Ying-tat, you must not let up on this. You must pursue the 39 Conduit Road incident. So, and even just now, another member asked about that. Now, so what I want to say is this. The government is soon to launch a consultation paper on consumer protection. You're going to further amend the trade descriptions ordinance. You're going to help consumers like those, you know, buying package from beauty parlors, yoga centers. But then we're just talking about tens of thousands of dollars. But what about buying a property? You know, if it's a $7 million property, is a lot of money. It could be the life saving of the people. But what protection is offered to the consumers who buy properties? Maybe this is the only property a person will ever buy in his lifetime. Now, we're told that the trade descriptions ordinance doesn't cover protection for consumers in the property market. And you just answered the question, you said you will look into that. But it's been an issue around for over a decade. The Consumer Council talked about it. The Law Reform Commission considered the matter too. And I hope this time round, the 39 Conduit Road incident would at least help us take matters forward. Can you please try to legislate as soon as possible for protection of home buyers? I fully believe that there should be transparency and fairness in the property market. There must not be any false transactions. There mustn't be any market manipulation. There mustn't be false information disseminated to the market. Now, on the 39 Conduit Road transactions, yes, you've already seen the documents, but then there is a criminal investigation going on, so I'm not at liberty to say too much on the case, but I can give you assurance. In the light of the 39 Conduit Road incident, we will seize upon this opportunity to try to address all the unfair practices in property transactions. We believe administrative measures will be more expeditious than legislative measures, and there will be more flexibility. But at the same time, we're not ruling out legislation altogether. What is important is whether our measures and regulations are effective. If they prove to be ineffective, we will add more measures, and if that's still not enough, we'll do even more. So we must make sure everyone is fairly treated. Developers must have fair return, and those who buy properties also receive fair treatment. They must believe that the investment in the property is fair, is worth the money, and there's no deception. So we will look at that from that angle. Whatever we can do, we will do. We won't give up. We've never said we won't legislate, but what is most important is how we address the immediate issues. And if our measures are not effective, most definitely we would consider legislation. And as I said earlier, this is a different commodity. It's not just any commodity. If we could convince all developers in Hong Kong, not many of them, there are just a few major developers. So if we can convince them to put public good first, and then everyone is fair, it will do the developers good as well, because there is fair competition, and it's good for everybody, and to the public, to investors, especially those who spend their life saving on their homes, and they will all be given sufficient protection.
Mr. Fredley, well, President, probably the Chief Executive is totally detached from people's livelihood. Well, he might say that, well, they don't have to buy the property now. They can wait until after the prices have come down. But then they're mysteriously popping up the prices through their agents and so on. The thing is, developer has unlimited resources, and they have a lot of information, and they're able to mislead the public and the consumers into buying their properties. So the problem is how the administration is able to resolve this problem. So can you promise that in your October policy address, you'll be able to provide us with a legal framework instead of asking us to wait? Chief Executive. Well, the problem that you just said, that's the main purpose of introducing the 9 measures and the 12 regulations. And if they are not effective, as I said, we will legislate. It's as simple as that. We don't have to wait that long. So as soon as they are not effective, then we will legislate. Mr. David Lee. Thank you, President. Chief Executive, in the wake of the financial tsunami, is the administration concerned that the financial services sector's regulation will become too conservative, affecting Hong Kong's status as an international financial center? Chief Executive. Well, in the wake of the financial tsunami and also the aftermath of the financial tsunami, in particular the regulation of the financial market, we have been following up on that. And Hong Kong has also participated in the financial stability or the global financial stability forum. We are also one of the members of the G20 group. And recently, we have been talking about the credit agency and the regulation of them. We have been following up on that too. We hope that, well, if it's implemented throughout Europe, then we will also be implementing this on the regulation of credit agencies. So we'll be doing the same thing as they do. And we've been following up on that. But then what we've been doing is sound and robust, and that would also reflect the actual needs of the market in Hong Kong. Will not be going too fast, and we will also not be lagging behind. We have to converge with the international move. Please rest assured about that. Mr. Kam Nai Wai, Chief Executive, just now a number of members have said that you said in your introductory remark that you would be focusing on improving people's livelihood so that they'll be able to share the fruits of prosperity. But then behind this, does it mean that it would be achieved at the expense of the minorities' interests? Well, when you came into the chambers, did you see the residents of villages from Choi Yun Chun? They have been working so hard, they've been persevering in order to fight for the survival of the village. And as you can see, on the day of the enactment of the constitutional reform package, the villagers were also here because the undersecretary promised them that there would be meetings, but then it did not come about. So the villagers were asked to move away, and a promise was made to them so that there would be this agricultural rehabilitation plan, so that they would be buying their land and they would be building their houses, and then they'll be able to rebuild their homes. But since February, it's already so many months, And villagers have now identified the agriculture laws, and yet the administration has been making things very difficult for them. They have not been issued with the rehabilitation license, and without that license, they will not be able to put up structures there, and they will not be able to rebuild their homes there. And some 80+ villagers are asking that they should be able to build their own houses there, so that they'll be able to return to their normal life in Choi Yun Chun. So what are you going to do to help them, Chief Executive? In fact, with regard to the rehousing of Choi Yun Chun villages, that's been underway, and good progress has been made. But then the real difficulty is, Mr. Kam, you will have to understand that, in fact, if they are actually farmers and if they've been doing farming, and I'm sure we'll be more than willing to help them to continue with their job. But then the thing is, are we sure that they were farmers in the past? We have to verify their status. We've been trying to help them. We have been trying to verify their eligibility as farmers, and actually we've been asking the Kadori farm to help us in verifying their status and identity. And if they've been farmers in the past, and if they want to continue to be farmers, we'll be more than willing to help them. That's why in this regard, I hope that you will understand that we share the same objective. The most important thing is, if they did not used to be farmers in the past, then the question is, why do they have to become farmers now? And if they've been farmers in the past, and in the future they just want to find a farmland in order to build houses instead of being farmers, then that would be a problem. That's why we have to check. Chief Executive, I wonder if you've been there to talk to the villagers there. Well, villagers, well, you're talking about the 3 generations living together, the grandpa, the son, and also the grandson, and you're asking them to prove that all the 3 generations have been doing farming on the land. So this is impractical or impracticable. What we expect the farmers or the villagers to do is to become self-reliant so that they can rebuild their homes, and that's the most important objective of them. And the villagers have been asking, all right, they have to move out in October. So Chief Executive, number 1, will you be going there to talk to them? And second, will you be willing to ensure that they will be able to move out before the houses will be torn down, or else are you going to take them away by force in October? Can you allow them to build their villages first before Choi Yun Chun would be cleared? So can you make that promise, and can you go and see them? Chief Executive Mr. Kam, you've already departed from the issue of farming. So you're talking about rehousing, and you're also talking about rehousing them before the village is cleared. We have talked about it many times, and we have also debated on the issue for 3 whole days, and there's been a lot of reflection in the community. We have been doing a lot of discussion and so on. A lot of the issues have been discussed, and there is no need for the Chief Executive to go down there to talk to them before things can be done. The most important thing is for those who have been doing farming, and they'll be allowed to do so in the future, we will be prepared to do it. But then for the demolition date, because of the construction of the XRL, because on the mainland they are doing it so fast, and we're already lagging behind, and therefore we hope to be able to do it on schedule so that by 2015 we'll be able to commission the service. That's why by the end of October they have to move out so that we can demolish Choi Yun Chun. That will be done on schedule. But then before then, how are we going to help them? Well, for those who used to be farmers, if they want to continue farming, then we'll be trying our best to help them. I hope that we can all face up to the issue. It's not that we're trying to rebuild a village so that they will move out, and only then will we clear the village. We may not be able to make that promise. Yes, Mr. Lee. President, Mr. Chief Executive, just now, you answered questions on property sale and whether or not you would be legislating on it, and you said that the 9 measures and the 12 regulations would be more expeditious, and they would be more flexible, and they would also be more quick. And you also promised that if they prove to be ineffective, then you would be prepared to legislate. Chief Executive, I don't understand why. Well, with a guideline, all right, you said that a guideline would be more effective than legislation, because we all know that the enforcement agency will be READER. And as far as I understand it, READER in the past never punished any developer as the public is concerned.
Legislation would definitely be more effective than a guideline. And also, when you legislate, I think that would also send out very clear message to the community. That is, the administration will be working hard to maintain a level playing field. In particular, members of the public are complaining about the high property prices, and they are already suspecting that the
developers are manipulating the market, and if you still insist on not legislating, and you are not even prepared to promise that by your October policy address you'll be putting out a legislative timetable, then would you be suspected of not sincere in doing this? Chief Executive. Well, in the wake of the 39 Conduit Road incident, a series of work is being done, and we have introduced the 9 measures and 12 regulations, and the effectiveness would be for all to see. And I also hope that you will not have this misgiving that we have refused to legislate. That's not our intention. What we mean is that we have already achieved that by the administrative measure. We have already implemented what we pledged to do, and what your concerns are will be addressed by the measures. And yesterday in this chambers, and if you feel that there are still loopholes, our colleagues have already promised that they will follow up on that. In particular, if there has been cancellation of transaction, the information will be disclosed. We'll be following up on that. And if you legislate, you will have to go through the different debates and so on, and that would be very time-consuming. With regard to the concerns about the transaction, we have not ruled out anything. In fact, if it's a pressing problem, we don't have to wait until October. The most important thing is we will do this first, and if there is anything that is proven not to be effective, then we will follow up by legislation. We are actually considering the feasibility of legislation and the scope of the legislation. We have to think through all these. But then, as I've said many times, we will not tolerate any false information being disseminated or manipulation of the market. We would not allow that to happen. Well, Chief Executive, please consider the perception of the public. In responding to my question, you said that you were concerned that legislation would take time, and that would also take a long time for the discussion. But then in your review of the trade description ordinance, you have to regulate unscrupulous trade practices, and that would also be extended to the service sector. In protecting the consumers, you're taking the first step. So can that also cover sale of property, and that would also save a lot of time for legislation? So will you be prepared to consider that? Well, anything can be considered, but then the trade description ordinance is talking about general commodities, and sometimes it may not be applicable to the sale of property. The most important thing is whatever means that you're going to adopt, the most important thing is the effectiveness of them. And if the 9 measures and 12 regulations are not effective, then we will go for legislation. If legislation is more effective, then we will go for that. The most important thing is, do we need to do it? We have not ruled out the possibility, and we can do things that are expeditious, but then when we do it, we have to be more flexible so that we can do it as soon as possible. We have not ruled the possibility of introducing legislation at all. Ms. Priscilla Leung.
Well, talking about imbalance, I think between yin and yang. Well, I think earlier in the political scene we did see such an imbalance at different levels, the central level, the regional level. The 5 district by-elections were claimed to be 5 district referendum that caused a political tension. Now, the constitutional reform package was passed. I wonder if that might help to redress the imbalance. Anyway, when I go to the district, residents still asking me this. For the legislative council system and the election law, they do allow for councillors to resign and then to stand for re-election again, by elections again. And then when they come back, they enjoy priorities too. Like today, they have priorities in asking questions. So there is this loophole in the system. And it's not just members who've felt it. Many in the community also see this loophole. I think Mr. Stephen Lam said after the passage of the constitutional reform package, the administration would actively consider amending the district election laws. Now, I've actually tabled private members' bill. I don't know what will happen to that bill. But anyway, Mr. Stephen Lam told me before that as far as my proposal is concerned, that is after members who've resigned, they should be barred from standing for by-election, and he thinks that's not tough enough. So can I ask, what is the legislative timetable for such amendments, and what ideas do you have in mind regard to these amendments? Now, on members resigning and then standing again by-election, there is indeed strong public view on the matter. And as Mr. Stephen Lam has pointed out, we are now looking at the matter. We are actively following up on such matter to plug the loophole so it won't happen again. Because I have put forward a proposal, there should be punishment for the members who've resigned in that they cannot be sent again for by-elections. Because some members claim that they might resign again if the constitutional reform package was passed. So I think the measure is not tough enough. Now, is it possible that we don't do away with by-elections so that for those who've gained second place in securing the most number of votes in the last election, they could then fill the vacated seat? Well, yes, I see you have studied a lot in the matter. Please take it up with Mr. Stephen Lam. As I said, we are actively following up on the issue. There are several possibilities. But you say that those who secured the second highest number of votes, they could then fill the vacated seat. Well, I think it's hard for us to do that within this term, because when the members were elected, the voters were not told this might happen. So we can only do it in future. So at the moment, we can only explore other ways to deal with the matter. But I think you can take up your suggestion with Mr. Stephen Lam. I understand the public are concerned about the matter because there seems to have been abuse of the electoral system, and we would like to plug the loophole as soon as possible. Mr. Tommy Cheung. Mr. President, I thought I were in a Western restaurant, because it seems that members will always come up with appetizer before they go to the main dish, and then that appetizer doesn't count, it seems. Anyway, on the 2012 constitutional reform package, it was passed in LegCo last month. Members said that the chief executive said that he spent 70% of his time on the constitutional reform package, but now you say you could devote more time to livelihood issues. Now, I think we can see prices of goods are soaring. In February, CPI inflation was 2.82%, and then it's gone up to 2.4% and then 2.5%. It will impact on the grassroots sector. So how much time will you devote to livelihood issues in the coming months? And what measures have you got to respond to inflation, the threat of inflation, to make sure that inflation wouldn't worsen? And Chief Executive, I hope I will have more time. There's still a lot of follow-up work to be done. And in members' questions, you know what the public aspirations are, and we also need to spend time on local legislation in relation to the constitutional reform. But of course, at the same time, we must work on other areas as well. I think I hope what's important is that we'll focus on livelihood issues and economic issues, because they are very important to Hong Kong. On the livelihood of the general public, in particular grassroots, and also the impact of inflation on them, we are closely monitoring that. Now, inflation is still manageable at the moment, but if there is a need, you have seen in the past, the government has launched various measures. For example, when we had the financial tsunami, we reduced rent, we did a lot of work. We adopted targeted measures to help the grassroots. So if there is a need, definitely we would come up with some targeted measures. Mr. Cheung, well, I'm glad to hear that from the Chief Executive, but in May we have a surplus of $25.9 billion, and then some time ago we were told we had a surplus of $12.1 billion, and in the past few months land was selling well. So in the next policy address, would you announce a series of measures to help the people, especially the middle class? Can you relieve their tax burden and other burdens? Well, on tax relief measures and so on, I think you could take it up with the Financial Secretary. My policy address is not to deal with these issues, but rather I'll look at the more fundamental issues on how we address livelihood issues and so on. On tax adjustments, that's all up to the Financial Secretary. It has nothing to do with me.
Mr. WONG Kwok-hung, Chief Executive, my congratulations to you, because under your leadership, we've managed to act now on a constitutional reform package. And I'd like to take the opportunity to say this on behalf of all senior citizens in Hong Kong on the residence rule on the OAA. Can you act now to make improvements to that? Because during the past 5 years, well, we have 12,316 elders living on the mainland as a result of the residence rule, because they have not been able to meet the SWD's requirement, and their OAA has been scrapped. And Mr. Wong Kwok-hung from the FTU has already accompanied the elders to the SWD to apply again, and they've already made it clear that if their applications are rejected again, then they'll file for judicial review. Of course, they don't want to go to the court because that would mean that taxpayers' money will have to be spent, and that would also be very time-consuming, because at present, with regard to the residence rule on the OAA, and also the CSSA's residence rule. In fact, there are two standards, because on the one hand, we're talking about 309 days, and the other is 240 days. And also for CSSA elders living in Guangdong and Fujian, they would be eligible for the CSSA even if they are not living in Hong Kong, and yet and therefore we have double standards for different things, and therefore this is a very complex issue. Chief Executive, now that you are able to devote more time for livelihood issues, my question for you is, in the upcoming policy address, will you be looking into this so that you'll be able to give us a good news this year, so that for the improvement of OAA, the residence rule will be scrapped, so that you'll be acting now on it? Chief Executive. Well, in dealing with some different welfare items, when we introduced it, there were certain conditions, and there was this legal background, and also it was also subject to different circumstantial constraints and so on, and therefore we cannot apply a one-size-fits-all approach for all these. With regard to the recent court case on the residence rule of 1 year on the CSSA, that is one cannot be away for more than a year. We have to stand firm on that. That's in relation to CSSA. We are studying the verdict. We are looking into whether or not we should file an appeal. With regard to other issues, for example, the OAA, the old age allowance. Yes, I understand that the community is concerned about this. And lawmakers and individual members have also been fighting hard for the senior citizens. I understand that Mr. Matthew Cheung is looking into it from the perspective of actual implementation and also the financial implication. We are looking into how we can relax the rule on the absence rule for citizens or elders on the OAA. We don't know what we can do. Of course, we don't want to see you in court. Mr. Wong Kwok-hung. Chief Executive, I share your sentiments. Really, we don't want to see each other in court, because when we see each other in court in a judicial review case, it's very costly, and also it's very time-consuming. We don't want that to happen. But then at the same time, we don't want elders to experience this, because in their twilight years, they have to make a living, and they're going back to their hometown, and they're just trying to spend their twilight days there. So under your leadership, if you're able to scrap it, or if you're able to reduce the absence rule, and if you are able to act now on it, then we don't have to see each other in court. So you haven't answered that question. Are you able to make an announcement in October, so that when you come back to announce your policy address, so can you give us a new direction? Can you make an announcement? Well, as I said, the policy address will be looking at several issues other than economic and livelihood issues. There are small items, for example, housing and elderly issues. These are our concerns too. I'll be more than willing to consider these issues. But then you also have to understand our financial affordability. Will that give rise to other problems? Will we be able to afford it? All of these policy changes, are they sustainable? These are issues that we have to think very hard about. And therefore, I hope that we will be prepared to discuss it. As regards elderly issues, I'm also very concerned about it. In particular, I'm already over 65. I'm also very concerned about how the elders will be taken care of in Hong Kong, in particular for the post-war generation. All of us have already reached a time whereby we have seen a very dramatic increase in the number of the elderly population. Will the administration be able to take care of them? OAA is just a part of it. And also, what about the disadvantaged group? And if their health deteriorates, what is going to happen? Will we be able to take care of them? And what about government resources? Will we be able to cope? It's not just about money, it's about manpower, it's about land. So all these will have to be considered together. But then I can promise you that elderly issues will be one of the important parts of the policy address. Last question. Mr. Paul Chair. Thank you, President. President, as we all know, recently, announcement or a consultation paper has been released on the establishment of an independent insurance authority, and that's to look at the current inadequacies and also the lack of regulation and so on. In particular, there is a prima facie case of conflict of interest, and also in the investigative power and also the penalty powers, they are all very limited. So I'm not asking questions on this, but then that also shows that there are also problems in the regulation of the tourism sector, because this is an important economic pillar. But then in the past, we have not got a very robust system, and we only have a limited company regulating the entire sector. And in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, we have heard scandals from time to time. Recently, we have heard some scandals about mainland tourists who have been ripped off in our shops, and there has also been death cases, and also in Thailand where there was a red warning, and yet package tours have departed, affecting the tourist safety. And also we have visitors being hung, and they have been left high and dry, and therefore we have all these problems. And repeatedly we have carried motions asking the administration to fundamentally address the problems to improve the regulatory system. So Chief Executive, can you respond to this? Will the administration and the chief executive do something during the remaining term to implement reforms to the tourism sector, so that we can have a similar body like the independent insurance authority set up for the tourism sector? I think the two sectors are somewhat different, but then in the tourism sector, for things that might affect inbound tourists, welfare, and also the safety, and also the reputation of Hong Kong as a tourism destination, we do attach a lot of importance to that. As you are aware, we have already instructed the TIC to deal with all these issues and cases very seriously. Alright, as the cases involve criminal element, we would particularly pay attention to it. And also, I understand that, I'm sure you also understand it better than I do, that is, they have already promised that they would be setting up arrangements in order to improve the reception of mainland tourists, and in a few months' time, they'll be coming up with a report. With regard to mainland package tours, we have to provide them with proper safeguards. And recently, I've just asked about it. Well, for the agencies taking care of these inbound tourists, they will have to, well, before they come, upon their arrival, they will have to be given an itinerary, and in the itinerary, it says very clearly that the tour guide would not be allowed to influence them in shopping, and they would not be forced to stay in the shops to do shopping. And in the itinerary, it would also state very clearly as to how much time they are expected to spend in the shops, and the name of the tour guide would also be spelled out, and there would also be a hotline for complaint. So the safeguards should be rather comprehensive, and when compared to other tourist destinations, our system is rather comprehensive. But then for travel agents and Mr. Chair, as you can see, they are providing their services in a variety of modes, and will it be able to be regulated by law? Well, this is something that we are also concerned about. The most important thing is we have to take different measures, and if they are found to be ineffective, then of course we will have to legislate. But then the most important thing is, if you look at the characteristics of the tourism sector, we also have to look at how the market operates and also the needs of the market. And we need to have the participation of the sector before we can improve the system. And therefore, you are from the sector, you can work together with us as to what is the best way forward. And the most important thing is that the reputation of Hong Kong as a tourism destination will have to be protected. Well, I only have limited time to ask a follow-up. President, I fully agree with what the Chief Executive said. That is, in terms of inbound tourism, we will have to regulate it. We are one of the most stringent cities in the world. Within 6 months, tourists are able to redeem or to get a full refund for the goods that they purchase. All right, it's like a kid. When they are not behaving, then we are not supposed to beat them up. We have to ensure that they would not be playing with fire. They would not be exposed to dangerous things. But then we are replacing a regulation with a penalty so that we are not regulating them before things untoward happens. We are trying to penalize them when something untoward happens. So I hope that you can adopt a different approach or mindset instead of replacing a regulation by penalty. We have to ensure that there will be a level playing field so that everybody will be playing fair. So yes, I agree that that is a good direction. All right, the Chief Executive will now leave the chamber. Members will please stand up. Thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you, members. I now adjourn the Council until 11 a.m. tomorrow.